Advised. And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, The Savage Nation. And here he is, Michael Savage.
It is Rock and Roll Friday on The Savage Nation. Thanks for waiting this long. The phone number to this show from anywhere in the United States is 855-400-7282, 855-400-SAVAGE. I'm not going to run a crusade on this show tonight or any other night. Oh, I have strong beliefs. You know what they are. I've written the books, done the show for 18 years. But I'm telling you what's happening to the conservative media. They're imploding. They're still arguing over the election. I turn it off. I can't listen to it. We all know Obama's a socialist. Anyone with an IQ above 90 knows he's a socialist. The Europeans who are educated know he's a socialist. The communists know he's a socialist. So what? So what? So the average dummy who gets food stamps doesn't know, and if they did know, they love him even more. So I'm not going to run a crusade to alert America to the fact that we basically have a socialist running America with a socialist Democrat Party. We know that. We who have been educated know that. And so therefore it leaves a vacuum in talk radio, to be honest with you. And that is, what do we do in talk radio now that we've seen a socialist revolution in the country that has swept the most incompetent, corrupt, divisive president in American history back into office? Not solely because he's so wonderful, it's because the Republicans are so awful. Romney was the worst possible candidate. And as I said to you before, without belaboring it, Newt Gingrich eviscerated Romney before the election. Newt Gingrich should be driven out of the country for what he did to this country. All the opposition research that Gingrich and his money men did on Romney destroyed Romney because it was used by Obama. Now, I'm through with the election. It's over. We've discussed it. Don't call me on this. I will not take any calls on this. My job on radio is to be somewhat entertaining and somewhat enlightening to you. And so I'll try to do that. So I want to turn to a story that's international and of importance, and it shocks me that nobody in talk radio covered it but me. And that is the issue of what happened at the UN yesterday to start with. Yesterday was one of the most seminal moments in UN history. The status of the Palestinians was raised to a great level. Non-member observer state. It was not covered by anyone in conservative talk radio. I was shocked. And wait, here's the bigger shock. The media isn't covering it. You'd think the liberals would be all over this. Hey, yay, Palestinians. But they weren't. So you have to ask yourself why. Why would the left-wing press not celebrate the heightened status of the Palestinians? And it's quite clear because Obama and Susan Rice were against this heightened status of the Palestinians. And so therefore the stenographers and the media did not want to disagree with their boss in the White House. Now that we have Izvestia or Pravda running from the White House through the newspapers and through the major networks, they didn't want to go against their boss. Now, here is a side question to that. We hear every day, Israel, Palestinians, Israel, the Muslim Palestinians, Muslim Palestinians victim, Israelis bad. How come we never hear about what's happening elsewhere in the world between Muslims and their neighbors? For example, there's a country called Myanmar. We used to know it as Burma. It was easy to pronounce. But now we have to call it Myanmar. That's the new PC name for the country. It's like you used to say Eskimo, now you say Inuit. Or used to say Indian, now you say Native American. But all right, we'll call it Myanmar. Now the question is, what's going on in Myanmar? What's going on is Muslims and Buddhists are killing each other in Myanmar. Buddhists? You mean all the Americans who put their hands together over a glass of water and a napkin in a Chinese restaurant think they're practicing Buddhism? But I thought Buddhists were peace-loving. I thought Buddhists didn't hate. Well, you thought wrong, John. Let me explain something to you. The Buddhists were originally a militant people. Yeah, you see the shaved head, the lotus colors, the monks. They were warriors. They had to learn to defend themselves from marauding hordes. So they've been kind of peaceful for a long time, and now they're exploding all over the world because the Muslims are taking over their territories or their countries. I explained to you yesterday on this program, The Savage Nation, that this is all about the territorial imperative from a zoological point of view. And with high birth rates and a militancy unseen in modern America, in modern history, The Muslims are threatening their neighbors all over the world. And so we only hear Jews, evil, Muslims, victims in the Middle East. How come you haven't heard about the ethnic hatred that's tearing apart a large swath of Myanmar? And, by the way, why did Obama go to this country last week? His first trip abroad was to Myanmar last week. Not one person in the media asked why he went there. He could have gone anywhere on earth. Why did he go there? He went there, in my opinion, and I'm doing an analysis from a one-man point of view. I have no colleagues. I have no insight. I have no K Street. I have no relationship to anyone in the media. I live alone. I talk to myself. Occasionally, I talk to the dog. It's getting so bad that I dreamed last night the dog talked to me. Now that's worrisome. I dreamed he was actually speaking in a proto-English, which was very interesting. He went from barking and grimacing to actually talking. That's frightening. But nevertheless, it was not Teddy who told me what's going on in Myanmar. It was the front page of the New York Times, and I had to read the whole article to figure out why Obama went to Myanmar last week. He went there at the behest of the Saudi Arabians. The Saudis said, you better go there as our representative and try to bring peace. So Obama goes to Myanmar last week, and what does he lecture the people about? Diversity. Diversity. You hear me? So what is this all about? What is going on in Myanmar? Well, I'll tell you what's going on. You would think Buddhists are placid, right? You're wrong. You would think that Buddhists, with their precept of avoiding harm to living creatures, would just roll over for their Muslim friends, would you? But you're wrong. If you look at the story and you listen to what's going on in one of these large provinces, the monks are now saying that the Muslims are invaders, they're unwanted guests, and they're vipers in our laps. These are Buddhists in Myanmar. Listen to this. One of them said, according to Buddhist teachings, we should not kill. But when we feel threatened, we cannot be saints. Violence in Rakhine State, where clashes have left at least 167 people dead and 100,000 people homeless, has set off an exodus that some human rights groups condemn as ethnic cleansing. Now, of course, they're condemning it because it's the Muslims who are getting the short end of the stick. That's the only reason they're calling it ethnic cleansing, is because in this case, the Muslims are not yet suppressing the Buddhists. They haven't figured that out. Now, that's why suddenly human rights groups are worried about them. And then the young monks are participating in a campaign to throw Muslims out of the country. Did you hear what I just said? Now, this follows a nation that only recently began a transition to so-called democracy from an authoritarian rule. It was ruled in an authoritarian way, and the Muslims and the Buddhists were forced to get along. But now that they have democracy, they're killing each other. Sound familiar to you? After a series of deadly rampages and arson attacks over the past 5 months, Buddhists are calling for Muslims who cannot prove 3 generations of legal residence. Wouldn't that be nice in America? Who cannot prove 3 generations of legal residence to be put into camps and sent to any country willing to take them. Hatred between Muslims and Buddhists that was kept in check during 5 decades of military rule, boys and girls, has been virtually unrestrained in recent months. Now, let's get to Obama. Obama goes there last week and made this issue a priority during his visit to the country. The first by a sitting American president. So many people say Obama is doing the bidding of Saudi Arabia, or he is a secret Muslim, and it leads you to ask yourself, what the heck did he have? What business did he have in Myanmar? What did he go there for? Well, he went there to preach diversity. When you ask the people in the street what's going on, leaders of the Buddhist majority in the largest state of Myanmar say they feel threatened by what they say is the swelling Muslim population from high birth rates and and they're also threatened by Islamic rituals that they find offensive, like the slaughter of animals. General Secretary of the Rakhine Nationalities Development Party, the largest party in the state, says, we are very fearful of Islamization. This is our native land. It's the land of our ancestors. Well, you don't know that during outbreaks of sectarian violence, the Muslims in their majority areas burnt Buddhist monasteries to the ground. Didn't make that to the newspaper. That's right. The lovely neighbors burnt the Buddhist monasteries to the ground, so now the Buddhists are fighting back. Now, I've given you the gist of the story. It's an interesting story. It's a terrible story, but it's a human story. Ethnic hatred is tearing apart a region of Myanmar, which explains why your president, amongst one of his first acts as president after winning the election, was to go to Myanmar and lecture about diversity. You hear this? So I don't have a question to ask you other than to point out to you the following. Whenever you see in the newspaper about the Jews and the Middle East and the West Bank, understand this is because there's massive anti-Semitism amongst the American left. Because the Muslims are at war or in disagreement with virtually any neighbor they live next to anywhere on planet Earth. It's something I have to point out to you, as uncomfortable as it may be. And I am not on a crusade. I am only a talk show host. I'm only giving you one man's news, views, and reviews, one man's opinion. And the story I just read to you, by the way, was front page in the New York Times today, strangely enough. How many people will talk about it? I really don't know.